In this lesson, we look at the evolution of HR. It is really important that we understand where HR came from and where it is going to. So therefore, let's start at the beginning. This lesson looks at the evolution of HR. Fortunately, you do not need to be a superhero to do this course. We have superheroes willing and able to help you. It's always good to get back to basics when life becomes difficult or complex. And that's the same when thinking about HRM. It is always good to look to the past and the history of anything. And that also is the case for human resource management. In the next part of this course, we will look at the history from the Industrial Revolution up to human resource management, and I am sure you will find it useful in looking to the future. It could be argued that HRM starts way back in the prehistoric ages. Indeed, some of our ancestors developed processes for the selection of such as tribal leaders or chiefs, and of course they would pass on knowledge, health, safety, and of course hunting techniques to the younger people in that particular part of the world. These tribal leaders or clan chiefs could be said to be the chief executive officers of yesteryear. It is perhaps, however, to China that we turn to see the first time when people began using employee screening techniques in order to recruit people for particular tasks. It is also the case that the Greeks, in a very well-developed civilization, had actually got apprenticeship schemes around 2000 BC. That concept of apprenticeship, of learning from a master, is still in use today. But it is to the Industrial Revolution, where people moved from agricultural to industrial production, and the emergence of large-scale factory or mass production units, that we really see human resource management come to be. In the case of Britain, that happened around 1880, but of course in other countries throughout the world, the industrialisation of their state or their country continues to this present day. What we have here is previously large numbers of people worked in small communities, often small villages, and farming. To some extent, the only human resource management that bothered them would be whether their son or daughter would take part in the farm, and the particular role they would take part in rearing cattle, and so on. However, come the Industrial Revolution, many people from rural environments in agricultural contexts would move to the large burgeoning cities that offered them so much. They moved to large factory units, poor housing, poor sanitation, and greater organisation. There was a need for people to start work all at the same time. The need for policies and procedures to make sure people were rewarded, and of course to make sure the company made profit. It is therefore very much the case that the modern idea of human resources really takes root around the start of the Industrial Revolution, and in the case of the United Kingdom, around 1880. A key factor in the development of human resource management, and of course management itself, was the introduction of what was called scientific management. This is sometimes also known as work study. The father of scientific management was Frederick W. Taylor. He developed the concept of scientific management by looking at the tasks that we had to do to conduct a particular overall task. The best known example of this was Taylor looking at the way in which at that time a man had to dig a hole in his street. He analysed the way in which various men worked and did this task, and then came up with the one best way. This would look at things such as the physique of the person, the way in which they held the spade or shovel to dig the hole, and importantly the size of the spade or shovel. If the spade or shovel was too small, they would not be productive, but if it was too large, it would become too heavy for them. They may perhaps tire more quickly or damage themselves, thus overall production would fall. This concept of one best way and a work study was about timing people in the way that they did the task, and was used in manufacturing until very recently and is still used today in many environments. Frederick W. Taylor is indeed known as the father of scientific management. This is important because it was perhaps the first time where people really looked at other people as being a resource to be used. It is in some way aligned with such as the Ford Model T production, where Henry Ford looked at the best way to assemble a motor vehicle. It was not with one person doing the full task, but by breaking down the tasks into small chunks and having an assembly line where people were more efficient in working. The Hawthorne Experiments took place between 1924 and 1932 at the Hawthorne Works outside Chicago. The Hawthorne Works themselves commissioned a study to see if their workers would become more productive in either higher or lower lighting conditions. Importantly, worker productivity actually seemed to improve whatever changes were made. In other words, if the lighting was made higher or the lighter was made lower, productivity still increased. Really importantly, however, was that productivity slumped when the study itself ended. It was suggested, therefore, that any productivity gain that did occur was as a result of the motivational effect of the workers of an interest being shown on them. In other words, workers were spoken to by the researchers. Negotiation was taking place as to the way in which the lighting would be increased or decreased, how the length of tea breaks would be altered, and so on. In effect, what was important was that workers were actually spoken to and an interest taken both in them and their jobs. Some people see this as the beginning of the Human Relations School of Management, which is very important to human resource management itself. In some ways, it contradicts the earlier methods of Frederick W. Taylor that we heard about earlier. Taylor very much saw people as a machine and one best way of doing things. Here, Elton Mayo and his team at the Western Electric factory outside of Chicago were saying that speaking to people and being human with other people was in fact a huge success factor in itself.